There's an intense battle happening these days on X about whether or not we should abolish the Constitution. People with all kinds of worldviews are weighing in. Let's talk about it. The project of classical liberalism and the Enlightenment is seen these days as mostly being a failed social experiment. And Exhibit A for evidence is all the crazy leftists, the socialists, the anarchists, the communists, and the Muslims. They're all winning the cultural battle. This is the narrative on X. And there is a call for a new strategy, something that is necessary to turn back the tide of the crazy leftists. Now, some versions of Christian nationalism, not all, so I would say not the Doug Wilson version, not the Andrew T. Walker version, not the Albert Mohler version, but more like the Joel Webbin and Stephen Wolfe version. Those versions of Christian nationalism are actually promoting a form of a dictatorship as the solution. These people often want to abolish the Constitution or at least set it aside for a little while and put a supreme leader in its place. But it's not just Christians who are having this conversation. Here's a short clip from a very secular person. She is not a Christian by any stretch of the imagination. She's kind of a new age promoting, psychedelic drug taking person who does a lot of work on reporting on radical socialism. But here's her solution to our current state of affairs.
I'm Carla Murasenko. I'm an analyst and independent journalist that's been covering the far left in America for the last 5 years, and I'm about to say something really controversial in this video, so get ready. Daryl Cooper, Martyr Maid, is right. Fascism is merely what happens when normal people realize the left will never stop unless they are forced to. That is exactly the correct position. And that's why retards like Joel Berry from the Babylon Bee and the king perpetrator of the woke right hoax, James Lindsay, want you to believe that Daryl Cooper is an awful person that you shouldn't listen to, because they are trying to force the idea that classical liberalism will provide any defense against the left at all. Classical liberalism has failed to stop the left for the last 100 years. We have got to start facing reality that if the classical liberals win, the left wins. I know this is a controversial idea that people don't want to consider, but maybe fascism and the benefits of stopping the left are worthy of some consideration in the discussion.
Okay, so this is a great summary of what I am seeing more and more of on X, and this battle that I mentioned at the top between classical liberalism, which is really constitutionalism and traditional American ideas, and what is being called post-liberalism, and this version of it that is trying to promote a dictator as and fascism as being a solution to the problem. I think that people on both sides agree that socialism's a problem. The queer anarchists are a problem. The Sharia law imposing Muslims are a problem. But the question is what do we do about it? What is the solution? And these people who are promoting a dictator say the Constitution and classical liberalism can't fix this because their framework caused this by saying that all religions are welcome and all religions are equal and all cultures are welcome here. This is what has led to the chaos. So we need to come up with some other solutions. And what Ms. Borisenko is suggesting is, I would say, similar to and adjacent to what some Christian nationalists are saying. Let's watch another short clip from her work. And again, I commend her work on her reporting on radical socialism. It's useful, but her solutions, I would strongly disagree with.
And if we continue down this classical liberal road, then at some point, the far left was going to win and kick all of our and it was going to be all our own fault because we were unwilling to do what was required to stop the problem. My number one priority is and always has been stopping the left from winning and overthrowing the country. And I really do believe they're going to do that. I spent all my time studying the far left. I studied their activists. I studied their organizers. I know what they're doing. I know how much further along they are than most people think. I 100% believe that we have 10 to 15 years before the far left tries to overthrow the government. And I think once they try, they're going to win. I don't know exactly when it's going to be, but they're absolutely going to try at some point. The Civil War is not Democrat versus Republican. The Civil War is radical revolutionary socialists versus the federal government. At some point, I had to say, classical liberalism has gotten us in this position. Libertarianism is not going to solve the problem. Conservatism is not going to solve the fucking problem. The Democrats sure are going to solve the fucking problem. There is one thing, and there is one thing only, that has the hope of beginning to solve the problem. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is basically fascism. And so I firmly believe that one of the most insidious ideologies on the left, which is queer Marxism has infested our entire schools. Queer Marxism has convinced half the population in public schools right now that they don't have a gender. 40 to 50% of kids in public schools right now believe that gender is a fluid concept. They believe gender is not real. That is all because of queer Marxism. And I firmly believe if we allow this queer to go on completely unchecked, they are going to destroy gender. They're going to destroy the meaning of gender. They're also going to abolish the nuclear family. They are going to get rid of all of the norms that uphold productive, stable society, because that is what the left is trying to do. And so for my money, if we can start banning queer and burning the books, I'm not joking about this. I want to have book burnings. I want book burnings to come back. I think we should be pulling all this queer shit out of the libraries, starting a fire in the parking lot, having giant bonfires of any queer and gender ideology at all. I think we need to ban the publication of it at all, at least a moratorium for like 10 years until kids stop believing that gender is not fucking real. And I think we need to imprison anyone that writes it. And I think we need to imprison anyone that teaches it, especially in schools, to kids. Now, that's not a very classical liberal philosophy. But again, this is not about my personal feelings. This is not about what type of libertarian world do I, Karlin Borisenko, want. This is about what do I think is required to actually fix the problem that we are in. And sometimes when you're an adult, you have to say, you know what? It's time to put my fucking feelings aside and do what I think is best to achieve the actual goal. We are not going to beat the far left until we start banning and imprisoning people who push this fucking ideology. It should just be banned. They shouldn't be able to teach kids that gender is not fucking real. They shouldn't be able to teach kids that they live in a fundamentally oppressive society, because they do not. We need to ban it. We need to burn the fucking books. We need to prevent the publication of it. And so if fascism is the only ideology that will allow me to do that, then yeah, I will dabble in fascist. Yeah, 100%.
So that's kind of a secular approach to solving the problem of what are we going to do with all these leftists? What is that solution? Is the Constitution up for that challenge? How do we resolve the problem of the queering of society and the Islamification of society, the socialism and the communism and all of that? Here is the Christian nationalist version of that. And again, this is just one stream of Christian nationalism. Here's Joel Webben.
We're degenerates. We're not even close to, we're degenerates. The Constitution is not, it's not suited for governing degenerates. For governing degenerates, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, if you agree, disagree. But I think for our population that is degraded morally and culturally, and religiously, as far as we have you need power. Men must be governed. you need a Caesar type, now if you're asking me my preference, that would probably be my preference, would be a constitutional republic. But I think the conditions for that is a moral people. So I think you can work towards that in the future. But I don't think constitutioning even harder is going to get us out of our current mess. I don't see us getting out of this apart from things getting worse and worse, and then eventually, like a Caesar type rising through the ranks, a populist, figure, and the people, the political will, the people are desperate, and they're like, yes, do it, so and so, and then so and so, Constitution be damned, just rules with an iron fist, and like a Cromwell type, and then you hopefully don't get his son. Maybe then you're able, and then you maybe it's just a one generation, one guy kind of thing, and then you have to move back to aristocracy or some other form.
And here's my problem with all of this. By the end of the 20th century, after fighting 2 world wars and enduring several decades of the Cold War, we just sort of made a decision that communism and fascism are not good ideas. These sorts of government don't work because humans have a propensity toward evil. Installing a Christian prince or a Catholic Franco is likewise not a good idea. We already did that. It wasn't good. Now, that's not to say that I have every question related to the Constitution worked out. I don't. There are a couple of very real issues that I am wrestling with. I might talk about them in future videos. But I do appreciate that our founding fathers of the United States of America had a healthy understanding of sin, and that for that reason, they installed a separation of powers, 3 branches of the government, and all of the different judicial powers. I think the best form of government is one where power is dispersed and disseminated over many people. That's the best that I've seen. I could be wrong, but if you found this conversation helpful, drop a comment below or share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you would like more information about my current thinking on how Christians ought to interact in the public square, I'm going to put a link to a long-form teaching on that topic that I did earlier this year in the description below.
The world is hurting. Poverty, division, injustice, and despair surround us. But there's hope. God's word offers timeless solutions for justice and healing. Join us on October 23rd through the 25th in Fairfield, Alabama for the Biblical Views on Justice and Society Conference. This transformative 3-day event explores how Scripture addresses today's challenges with clarity and compassion. Hear from thought leaders like Monique Duson, Kevin Briggins, Alton Hardy, and Krista Bontrager as they unpack biblical principles for justice and practical steps for your community. Together, let's discover God's plan.